Episode 89 of the Fired Coaches podcast. We have James Williams joining us today. Kind of got connected with him by having Cabral Huff on actually earlier, a few episodes back. He's connected to Cabral and he's been coaching high school basketball, college basketball. He's written some books, has his own podcast. Seems like he's got a lot of things going on, a lot of different spinning plates in James's world. So James, I appreciate you sitting down and joining the podcast.
Man, Marcus, I appreciate you responding. Yeah, I did watch Coach Huff's on your show, and then I reached out the fire coach. I was like, I'm a fire coach. Maybe I could have a little something to say. So I reached out, and we made the connection. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you joining. And we've talked about this a lot on different episodes, but it's, again, there's a lot of more coaches I feel like that have been fired than haven't been fired.
Right.
So it's one of those things that we're trying to somewhat normalize here, if we can at least normalize that at all. So I guess, going back to your earlier days, like, what made you kind of get into coaching? Because I know you spent a lot of time in the Georgia area. You're at Kings Ridge, you're at Norcross, you were at Charles Drew, different experiences at kind of the high school level. So what got you into coaching?
The biggest thing was I wanted to give back to the game. I wanted to be the person that I believed that I didn't have. I was talented, but I didn't have anybody to see my talent and be like, let me work with you here. And so it kind of just matriculated because I wanted to play. Of course, I moved to Atlanta in 2001. And when I moved to Atlanta, the basketball scene was on fire. That was when just Georgia basketball. I'm from Georgia, so Georgia basketball, I grew up around it my whole life. But to actually be immersed in it after dropping out of college was something different because I was playing in pro-ams. I was doing a lot of pro-ams and a lot of leagues throughout the city, which is a very underrated scene from Georgia basketball. Like the men's leagues, it's very competitive. And so I just had a coworker. It was one of those situations where a coworker knew I'm a Laker fan, so I had my cubicle draped with Laker and basketball. I'm 6'4", so people automatically assume that I do something related to the sport. One of my coworkers, invited me out to watch his son's practice, and man, I watched this practice. They were practicing on the half court. Never seen that before in my life. It was like a half court, and it was 45 minutes, and it was over. And I was like, is this what your kids get? This is what the kids are getting.
Like, this is it?
Yeah, this is what they're getting. And I'm a teacher by nature. My passion is teaching. I just didn't go into the education field, which I probably would have gotten to coaching a lot sooner. This was like 2007. So by the time I got to the summer, I had another gentleman reach out to me, was like, hey man, come watch I have some older kids. Come watch me practice. So I watched this travel team practice, and man, honestly, ironically, he never showed up to a practice, and I just kind of kept coming because it gave me something to do after work. And one day he didn't show up, and so the director of the AAU program, she was like, "Hey, would you want to coach?" And that's how I officially got into coaching. I was coaching this travel ball program in Cobb County on the west side of it, on the west part of Metro Atlanta. And man, I fell in love with the kids. It was the kids, man. It was just being able to give back to them, to be able to impact the kids. And honestly, there's a story that I don't tell often. Sorry about that.
You're
I
good.
don't tell often, but there was a kid in my program, and his father was abusive towards him. And one day he came up to me after practice, and he was like, "Coach, I don't. There's not a." We was having a conversation. He was like, "There isn't a man in my life who doesn't drink." And he said, "Alcohol's destroying my family. I don't think I'll ever want to drink again." And I'll be honest, Marcus, at that very moment in time, I decided to not drink alcohol anymore because I didn't want to be the one. I wanted to be the one person in his life,
Like another one that's in his life. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't want to be that, and I wanted to be the one example of something that he could say that he never, because he said every man, he's never experienced, a male to male relationship that didn't involve some negative aspect of alcohol. So I was like, man, I want to be the one positive. I want to be the one person in his life where he said, where I know this guy doesn't drink. And the kid didn't know this, but it was at that moment, like the taste of alcohol was removed. And it was that type of impact. And, you going to pick up kids, and you're seeing kids in their environment, you're feeding kids, you're taking kids on travel tournaments, taking kids who never left the state to these back. We played in some of the worst, tournaments you could possibly probably play in. But it was just great opportunity for me to see that I can impact. And then I heard this quote. It was George Ravener. Actually, he's one of the people that I looked up to, George Ravener. He was like a coach, and it's probably been said by more people, but I remember George saying it. He said a coach will impact more people in his lives than most people do in their lifetime, like in a year, like in a season, right? And so it was just one of those things where to impact the kids and something bigger than me. I wanted to be the guy in the community that everybody knew. I wanted to be the guy in the grocery
And
store. They say that's coach. So that's how that's how it came from me.
and when did what year was that when you made that statement where you're like, I'm not drinking alcohol? When was that, like 2010, something around there?
Yeah, 2010. 2010
Yeah.
exactly.
Well,
Yep.
good for you, man. I love. I mean, again, to see that, right, and make that decision where you're like, hey, this kid's probably never going to know this about me, but I want to do this for him just because I believe that that's the right thing. I mean, that's a crazy story. So then, starting with AAU and traveling and all that, was that what kind of then opened the door where it's like, I think I want to do the high school thing? Was that kind of like the
Yeah,
bridge
because
and
I'm
like getting that
yeah.
started into that?
Yeah, so part of me is the competitiveness, right? Like AAU coaches don't have their records. Nobody cares if you win the summer. No, nobody's like I went
Right.
33-8, over the course of a summer.
It's like, cool.
I
Nobody
want
knows that, right?
Yeah, I wanted to coach, and I'm not saying travel ball coaches it don't matter, but I wanted to coach where it matters. Like I wanted to coach where they're keeping record. So I wanted to coach high school, and to do that, I had to get my degree because in the state of Georgia, the public school system, you can't coach if you're not, affiliated with the school. You could be a community coach and go through the community coach process, but for you to be a head coach, you got to have your degree, kind of teacher certification. You got to be certified to be a teacher. And so I went through the process of getting back in school and started the process of getting my degree. All the while, I became a community coach in Georgia. So that way, and that's how I ended up at Kingsridge. So I got Coach Ivan, man. I won't forget this brother. He was the first person to hire me on staff. Didn't know me, but of course, a referral. My life has been about referrals more than anything else, relationships in this business. And he took me on. So I spent a year. That's how I ended up at Kingsridge. And it, God is so good to me because I ended up being the head coach because he got relieved of his duties over Christmas break. And I remember getting the call from the AD on my way to our first practice. He was like, "Man, we relieved Ivan of the coaching duties. Can you take over for the rest of the season?" And I just started crying because you're never ready. Like
Yeah, yeah, right.
as an assistant coach, like you
You got
know,
all the answers.
yeah, in your head, you're like, man, okay, if something were I had those moments where something were to happen, I'd do, but to actually have it happen, like to hand it to you that way, and you got to respond to the guys, you got to make decisions. And so I called my pastor at the time, and we talked. He was like, man, you were ready for this. You were built for this, and that's what. And actually, ironically, I have been developing my coaching philosophy through that process. Like it hadn't fully been fleshed out, but I had the basis of what I wanted my coaching philosophy to stand on, my platform. And yeah, so I took over for that half season. That was the 2012, 2013 season. Then actually that probably was the first time I got fired because the new coach that they actually hired in the summer relieved me of my duties. So I was a man without a team. And again, relationships. One of my good friends, Kareem Horton, who runs a travel ball program now, IBA, International Basketball Academy in Atlanta, Georgia. He was working at Norcross, and he introduced me to Coach Jesse McMillan. And Coach Mack brought me on, and the rest is, I guess, that's where I got a crash course in learning about working with high-level athletes in a high-level program to where every day the expectation is state championship. And that was kind of the course that set for me about the winning mindset. And I learned
Which
from
is
Coach.
probably really good for you to
Oh,
see, right? I mean, obviously, again, you go from AAU to, hey, I'm just getting my feet wet with high school. Now I'm running a team, and now I'm seeing like, hey, what a standard is, right, at a really good
yeah,
program.
yeah. And and the standard wasn't even set with us. It was set before just the history of Norcross from, 95, 94, 95 to going into the 2000s. And you talk about the mid 2000s, the teens. And then later on in the teens where, there was a stretch there where they were winning state championships, every 3 years, on that on that run and talent. I'm talking talent. So that team that we had 9 guys go Division 1. 5 of those guys played professional sorry, all 8 of them play professional basketball in some capacity. Some still playing now on that 2017 team that found, guys like Brandon Boston.
But yeah, he's with the
Yeah,
Bucks G League team right now. Yeah,
he played on that.
or
He
and
was
not
I
the.
coach.
I shouldn't say the Bucks G League team, the Bucks Summer League team, but he's a guy I always thought like he's had some real flashes in the NBA. I mean,
Man, to see him at that age, I seen him, early, super talented, a lot of guys. And so that was exciting, because you're working with potential professionals, guys who had expectations when they came into the gym. So your level as a coach, you got to come in ready. And I learned that from Coach McMillan more than anything, like be ready. There isn't enough preparation because the guys that you're working with, their expectation of you is that you're coming in prepared. And that's one of the worst things. So that's kind of where I got comfortable because I tell people, well, put this in your head. You're down by it's 10 seconds on the clock. You're down and and they call timeout. Most coaches they walk, almost to like, the 3-point line, and then, you go back to the huddle. And when you get back to the huddle, there are 15 to 20 eyeballs that are expecting you to make a decision.
that yeah.
Just like that. And could you imagine if you're not prepared, you're not ready for that moment, how that looks? Because the reverse of that is you got the crowd. They can only see, but that huddle, those eyeballs, the expectation is you're prepared for this moment. And we're waiting for you to give us the instruction that we need to go out here and execute, whether we execute it or not. And so that, you get a crash course in that, of course, learning that, but then learning that when you got guys who are like, hey, I'm preparing myself to go to a top college in the country or to play professional. I'm expecting you to have the answer. So the expectations was pretty high for that.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I feel like you got a real huge crash course in a short few months, honestly, few years.
Yeah.
So what got you to Russ College where, you kind of get your feet wet with college basketball, and I think you're a residence hall director there and as well.
Yeah.
What kind of was that jump from like a high school scene to the college scene?
That was a dream because all along I wanted to be a college coach. I didn't really want to coach. I didn't want to be a head coach in high school. I wanted to be a college coach. It wasn't necessarily head coach. I wanted to coach college. I gave up a very good opportunity at Drew because I don't want to skip over that because the 3 years that I spent there pretty much gave me the foundation and the confidence that I could win. So prior to me coming to Drew was a very new high school. They started the high school program in 2014. I took over in 2017. So they had 3 years of being in existence with no future, no hope of having success. And so I come from Norcross, where in 3.5 years we had lost more than 6 games, and then you come over to this program that is losing double-digit games in a season. And it was the first crash course that I got in your mentality and your mindset should inspire other people around you. Like if your mentality and your mindset, you believe in what you believe in, other people around you will believe in it. And we turned that program around. And but in 2020 during COVID, the dream was, college. And so I got the opportunity to go to Russ College to coach college. Didn't know much about Russ, didn't know much about NAIA,
Yeah.
didn't know much about HBCUs outside of the knowledge that I gained just from, being around and being in Atlanta, that particular HBCU. And yeah, man, he said you can come on board. It was a huge pay cut, and it was during COVID. And so
So
one of the toughest things that I had to do and I left in August, so it was right prior to before school's getting started. I had to get on that Zoom and tell those guys that the thing that I told my friends at that time was, I can't tell you to go chase your dreams, and I don't do the same thing. So as a coach, I can't tell you to do something. It's like the thing now where it's like coaches are telling kids to be loyal and NIL, but the first opportunity or chance that you get to bump up or move, you'll go take that opportunity, especially if it's your dream job. And so I can't tell those guys, hey, chase your dreams, follow your heart and stuff like that. And I don't do that. So man, we had a very good team. The expectation in year 4 was for us to go to the state championship game, in our classification. I really did believe in the group that I had, and I think I had thought I figured out what my problem, because we had an opportunity the year prior. I thought that was the team to win it, and I left. I decided to
did you
go.
think that, I mean, again, you were younger in your coaching career at that point, but
Yeah.
did you think that this might be the one opportunity where, hey, there's a college opportunity and this might be my one chance to kind of get a college job?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. that also played a part in it because I didn't have the college connections that a lot of these guys in the industry. I didn't have the relationships at the time. Irony. I'm glad you mentioned that. Coach Huff at Kingsridge, my first that when I took over, I coached against Coach Huff. So St.
Wow.
Francis and Kingsridge are like right around the corner. They're both private Christian schools that are right by each other. And this is when Coach Huff had the 3 NBA players, Malik Beasley, he had those guys, and they were in our same region, so we played them. So I got an opportunity to meet Coach Huff and hear about Coach Huff and see the work that he was doing right around the corner from me. We just hadn't had that direct connection, but I seen him from afar and I admired him from afar. And so that was like my first introduction to him. And I tell him he'll laugh at this. I tried a triangle and 2. I tried a triangle and 2. I tried to play man to man and did the triangle thing, but I didn't realize he had a third player who was just as good as the other 2 players. And in that situation, that wasn't good strategy. But I was just trying to do anything to kind of beat them because they were so good that particular year. But yeah, so that was my introduction to Coach Huff, and it was actually Coach Huff who I talked to during that process because we got tighter during COVID. It was a great time for coaches from the standpoint of developing relationships and getting a crash
Connecting.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of Zooms, right? So I was on all these coaching Zooms during COVID. Every week, you talk 3 to 4 times a week. You're just on Zooms with all these coaches across the country, and you're meeting these people, and you're getting gems, and you're getting ideas, and you're getting plays, and what I'm saying, having Zoom conversations where you and the other person's sharing the screen, and you're drawing up a diagram. It was a crazy time of connection, and so he actually was the
Yeah.
first person.
We had sorry,
Yes.
not to cut you
No,
off.
you good.
We had 9 coaches up here kind of in the Midwest that every Friday
Yeah.
night, like we talked for like 2 hours. And it's funny how many different people have those things where it was like, but again, that was our only like
That was our only way.
socialization
Yeah.
outside of walking around and maybe taking a walk outside. I mean, it was
Yeah.
an odd time. So I guess when you get to Rust, you're doing resident hall stuff as well too. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that and just like the balancing of duties of like, hey, I want to be all in basketball, but also to get paid, I got to be doing other stuff too.
I was only at Russ for 4 months, to be honest with you. I wasn't even there long. I left in August, got there in August, and left in December. The coach the coach that I work for is actually back there now. This will be his first year back. Ed Newton. Shout out to him because he took a chance on me as well because he reached out to Coach Huff. You'll see that thread or thing all along. Like Coach Huff is like the person who vouches for me for a lot of stuff. So I appreciate him so much. But yeah, man, that was crazy during COVID because there was restrictions. It wasn't that many people on campus. You can't really. It was just a tough time to try to practice and put together a season and get It was just the focus, the kids. I felt so bad for that group of youth, because their whole world was turned upside down with how that their learning models. You had to develop this new learning model. So now you have a lot of guys who probably need more one-on-one attention in the classroom trying to do online stuff. So focus, what I'm saying, being able to access, how to use portals and things of that nature was always difficult from the psychological standpoint and intelligence standpoint, but then the emotional standpoint, because you don't have the same level of touch points that you normally have with your guys, you know, uh, during that particular part. So it was difficult for all of us, and they tried their best, but they told me I got COVID in December. So I got it. So I had to be in the dorm, but I also, because I was around the students all the time, doing dorm duties. And so that was a bummer because you're trying to practice and, I just thinking, I was a little naive because I'm thinking, man, like a college coach, all I do is basketball. You know what I'm saying? I left high school, to where you teach in a class or, what I'm saying, you're doing something in school for 8 hours a day, and then you transform into a basketball coach. Well, I'm thinking college, 24/7 basketball. You know what I'm saying? All I do is think about basketball, recruiting. I was excited about those things, but I didn't do those things at small colleges.
Well, and again with COVID too, right? Like that's just
Yeah.
like a double whammy.
Man, with small colleges, you tend to wear a lot of hats. You know what I'm saying? And maybe some hats that you're not even qualified to do, but you got to do it to kind of keep the program running. So I learned that. Again, you take all your places where you've been and you learn. So I learned that situation there. And then they told me right before the semester started that I couldn't coach, that I had to be in the dorm. And I said, oh no, I didn't leave. I didn't take a pay cut or leave a good team that I, had built to come to college and do this. So I was kind of it was another situation where I was a man without a school. And that's where my relationship with Coach Huff kind of deepened because I went to, Voorhees University.
Voorhees.
Yeah, I went to Voorhees with him. His situation changed during COVID because the guy he had coming in, because they didn't start when we started. We were practicing and stuff in like August. He had to wait till January because
That
Voorhees,
was the
where
same. That was the same thing here in Division III in Wisconsin. We had
yeah,
to wait till January too. Yeah.
they had to wait till January. So he was just building and trying to, get stuff ready for the players to come and find players. He had to find players. So he spent, and I was at the same time, I was on the phone with him communicating during this process, just talking with him because it was difficult because he was by himself, trying to build this program. And this was his second go round in college, first time as a head coach in college. And so it was a learning curve for all of us, like together, which was cool. And so his assistant that he was supposed to have come in didn't come in. And I didn't have a job. And I was like, hey, man, I'll come. He was like, I can't pay you, Jay. I said, hey, man, I just want to come work with you. And again, his reputation preceded him because I knew all the people that had worked for him and they all had gotten jobs and they all were head coaches. And
And you knew the character of him, right? I
man,
mean,
Marcus, to think about the people that he hired and the jobs he got, I was always adjacent to him. Even when I was at Norcross, I seen his teams. When I was at Drew, he was at Holy Innocents. So it was like we were always adjacent to each other. And then finally, I was like, man, this is like a perfect opportunity to work for somebody that I admire, that I respect, and that other people admire, respect. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn because again, I was still young in coaching.
well,
You know,
and what was your, obviously again you're talking about kind of the relationship you had with him, but what was your perception of him prior to actually working for him then as an assistant? Like, was it 100% what you expected in terms of, or was it even more than what you thought it would be?
no, nobody gave me. It's hard working for coach. It's hard in a good way because the expectation that he has of himself, the standard that he has for himself, is the same standard that he has for the people that work for him. And so my very first day of being on campus, he put me to work. Like it wasn't no situation. You kind of break yourself. Hey, I'm just gonna sit and watch practice and see what you got going. Let me see a couple plays and let me see how you run practice. He was like, no, very first day, this is exactly what he told me. Now I wasn't getting paid, mind you. I had to figure out my situation. He was like, you need to bring a pair of khakis. I'll get you a polo. You need to be prepared to work. That's what he said. First day, first practice. You talk about Coach Huff. If he hires you, he's expecting you to start immediately. Ain't no break in time. Ain't no time to, what I'm saying, figure things out.
No honeymoon stage,
No,
nothing.
there's
Just
no
let's get
honeymoon
going.
stage with Coach Huff. He expects you to get to work immediately. And that was one of probably the biggest things that I took away from him is that you gotta be like to be great, you gotta go after the greats in the way that they go after. Like you gotta beat them to the punch. So I became a better assistant. And again, I learned from Coach Mack at Norcross, who's a high level coach as well, but he wasn't as talkative with me. Coach Huff allowed me to do things that built my head coaching muscle for college. You know what I mean? So I kind of got, you're sitting, and I became his right hand, like knowing what type of water he likes, knowing his moods and things like that, knowing how to offset him. Like I just learned how to be a better server. You know what I'm saying? Of my head coach, and not erase the fact that I wanted to be a head coach because I told him I wanted to be, but I had to show him. You know what I mean? Because if it not,
But if you made that program and you made him great, it's going to give better opportunities for you then
that's
too.
the basis of it, man. It's just like I wanted to serve because it's not about me, it's about the program. It's not about the guys that I would recruit, it's about the guys that he wants. And so you learn you learn what type of athlete that he wants. You know what his vision is. I learned the recruiting package. His recruiting package that we did, the PowerPoint presentation, I learned it front and back. I could do it. Like if as a head coach, I could say what he said, like I could say what he says to recruits. And I would do that, but just in my own way once I became a head coach. But I really embodied and I really believed what he was selling to everybody. Or what what I'm saying, I bought in. And I think that was one of the best things that I could have did because it was that buy-in that allowed him to say, hey, this guy he could be my replacement if I should leave, right? Because not because
Which,
that's
right?
that's and that's exactly what happened. It was his vouch, I believe, was the reason why, I was able to maybe be ahead of the pack. Because not saying I was I call it the Coach Huff tree. he allowed me to do me, but also take pieces of what he brought to the table, and it matched. So people say you sound like Coach Huff because we align. Our visions align. First of all, it starts with our faith, our belief in Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. That was the very first thing. And then it spans from there. Everything kind of aligned. And I was able to put my spin. Again, I have been developing my coaching philosophy, which is called choices: communication, hard work, organization, integrity, commitment, excitement, sacrifice. So I have been developing this all along. And now I get the opportunity at the college level to implement choices to my athletes, and one of the most, I guess, seals of approval was he and I sat down and talked about the guys that he was going to take with him to Edward Waters, but I pretty much kept that team, because I helped recruit those guys during the process. I had a hand in every one of those guys. So the transition, a lot of coaches, whenever there's a coaching change, kids leave. I kept 80% of the team. So that first year, my first year as a head coach was a little easier because I didn't have to go out and get as much. You know what I mean? And now you just kind of recruit for the future as opposed to the right now, which a lot of coaches, that's a big deal for them when they get to that place.
What was that like? Obviously, you'd been a head high school coach, right? I mean, we talked about that at Drew, and obviously getting that interim a type start. But what was it like, running a college program? Obviously, something you'd been familiar with, like you're mentioning, you recruited those guys, but you get that job. I think it was May of 2023, and
Yeah,
what was
2023.
that feeling like? I mean, obviously, you're more prepared, right, than what you were in the earlier days when you were
Yeah,
explaining your high school stuff. But what'd you feel taking over?
I felt ready. I felt ready because it was a preparation with Coach Huff. Like I already knew the challenges that he faced at the organization that we were at Voorhees. Like there were challenges. I already knew those challenges. And that's always the toughest thing. You don't know what challenges lie when you take a new job. You'll find those as it comes along, especially if you're a head coach. And now you have to figure out how to navigate the new problems that may come with the old problems that are already there. But I already knew the old problems, and I had a good map of the best strategy to be successful. I had relationships on campus that I developed on my own. I worked on campus. So I found, I had a job. So the academic piece was very easy for me because I was in charge of academics under Coach Huff. Learning admission, learning that process. Like I said, Coach Huff gave me a lot of leeway to learn things on my own, and he didn't take. He's good at delegating until you mess up. So he allows you to take ownership of certain things. Now he's responsible for everything, which is what I learned. I'm responsible for everything, but he had somebody in me that I could delegate to, and I can say for me that helped me because I didn't have anybody that I can really delegate things to. It was just me kind of, in that situation of, trying to figure out everything. You become general manager, you become recruiting coordinator, you become the academic coordinator in a way, you're
Counselor,
counselor.
everything, right?
Yeah, yeah, brother, big brother. Guys get pregnant, get girls pregnant. You end up being, godfather, or advisor, stuff like that. I had a couple kids, man, they had parents pass away, and so, you're driving them to home, and recruiting was difficult because you don't have multiple coaches to send out. So, being in the gym, having a presence in the gym was something that I was big on. So I learned that for the
It's
preparation. That was probably the biggest thing.
it's interesting because, and I'm sure you've gotten this before, where people are like, "Well, you're a college coach, so what do you do for a full-time job?" And it's like, okay, let me tell you, like what you just said, right? Like that's a perfect, like, let's cut it here and cut it here, because it's like every day is different, and
Yeah.
it's endless, right?
Yep.
Like you could be helping somebody with their finances. I mean, there's just so many things, right? Where you're that adult father figure,
Yeah.
guardian, whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
because these kids are away from home and you're the point person, right?
Yeah.
And so
The parents have
it's
that
endless.
expectation too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the school has the expectation for you to be above board, for you to do things the right way, to do things in an appropriate manner. There's an expectation there. There's expectations for your players. You get transfers from all various parts of the country, even international. I learned how to navigate I-20s, getting international kids. But again, it goes back to the biggest thing, Marcus, that I told you earlier. The thing about me is with college coaching is I have an opportunity to extend somebody's playing career, especially a kid who be fringe. The NAI, you can get those fringe guys who have talent, but they need development. You know what I'm saying? Like they may have all the pieces, all the natural giftings, but they don't have and their high school wasn't equipping them enough to play college. So it's not a net match. Your top 100 guys, they get the specialized training. They'll get the trainer, they'll get the equipment. But guys 300 to 40,000, it's really a matter of it's a difference of training and who's around you and your
Do you have the
beliefs.
access, right? Like all the
Right.
stuff. Yep.
So to be able to still offer people opportunity at a great education, I learned a lot at Voorhees. My HBCU experience happened not with me being an undergrad, but me being a college coach. I pretty much was living the HBCU experience, as a coach there. I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about our culture. I learned so much about the guys that are around and just like the experiences and just about higher education. I got a crash course in higher education that I taught. I taught on campus. So I didn't finish undergrad when I first came out of high school. I ended up going back. I got 2 master's degrees. So, I told you I'm a teacher. So I love being in the classroom. So I got an opportunity not only to mix with my players, but I got an opportunity to mix with the student population on
Population.
campus, being in the school of business. So I got a good opportunity there. It was one of those things where everywhere I try to go, I don't mind teaching. Huff would tell you, man, teaching is off the board for him, but I personally love being in the classroom. I like being in the classroom with the students. So if I get an opportunity at another job, that is a role that I'll be willing to play for an organization, that hey, I'll get in the classroom to teach.
Yeah. It was, I believe, October of 25. You were
Yeah.
let go at Voorhees. And
Yeah.
again, right, Fire Coaches podcast. What do you remember about just that feeling, kind of after getting that news? Obviously, it was right before season starting or right as season is starting.
Man, one of the most disappointing times in my life, not because I got fired, but because of the way in which I got fired. I take full responsibility for what I did, but I don't think it was a fireable offense, which sound like the dude in prison who says I'm innocent, right? I did something. I lied to my athletic director. I lied to my athletic director when I was asked about something that happened. I lied to her. I lost her trust. And when that happens with the athletic director or administration, they got to let you go. So I understood why I got fired. I took my guys to the beach, man. I took the guys to the beach. I live in Bluffton, South Carolina. Hilton Head is 35 minutes from my house. It was an hour and a half from our university. I watch everybody on social media, every college coach take their guys there within a beach. They take their guys to the beach and they do a beach workout, right? You just go to the beach, you do a beach workout. And that's what we did, man. I did the volleyball with the medicine ball. The guys had fun. Took a picture. Picture went on social media. My athletic director seen it. She asked me, did any of the guys drive? And so I'm assuming, I believe it wasn't, but I'm assuming it's a school policy where the guys, the kids, they're grown people. They can't drive if it's a school related event, right? And so I got asked by the AD, did anybody drive? Now I didn't violate classroom rules. The guys went after class. It was after 4 o'clock. The last class that my guy had was 4 o'clock. So the guys who drove, they had a later class, so they came a little later. And so again, it's just me by myself. I didn't follow proper protocol to get another driver, to get another van, to make sure all the guys could fit in the van. So essentially what I did was I took the guys to the beach. I brought them to our house, my house, this house. I brought them here. We got a beautiful home in Bluffton. They came, I fed them because the time that they were going to be away was their meal time. So I always replace a meal, if it's dinner or lunch out from. So, and the guys got back to campus. 2 weeks later, I got called they did an investigation and I was labeled a liability. I think that the reason why I said it was disappointing because I've been there for 5 years. I, I did I did so much out of my own pocket to make sure that our program could have the little things. And for them to call me a liability, for them to say that I was a problem to the university after everything I had done and had given, that hurt. That was the hurting part. The disappointing part was you got to eat it. Like I had to eat it. The disappointing part was on October 9th, it was the first day in 15 years that I wasn't preparing for a game. Who am I? What do I do with myself? I was like, what do I do? Like I I've had a job in coaching. I've worked with athletes. I've worked in the sport of basketball. And currently at this moment, I'm no longer in the sport of basketball. You know what I mean? I got all these Voorhees University logo stuff, personal things that I bought. My wife was invested in the program. My daughter was invested in the program. My social media is littered. I got logos and PayPal accounts that I created so that we can receive donations and stuff like that. But just like that is gone in 2 weeks for the season. And then the most important thing is my players, the guys that I recruited. And Marcus, to top all of that, to say all that, I had a I had a kidney transplant. I had I was diagnosed with kidney failure in 2023. So from 2023 sorry, 2022. So from 2022 up until October 2025, I have been dealing with kidney disease, full on kidney failure. And Marcus, not one day for that university did they ever not get 100% of me. I was on the road recruiting. I was in the gyms. Me and my son sometimes. I was There was nobody that couldn't say that I did not represent Voorhees University outside on the recruiting trail at events and things of that nature. And then my physical body, I actually ended up in the hospital for the final time at practice, 6 a.m. We were preparing to play in the conference tournament, and I passed out in February of 2023.
Wow.
No, sorry, 2024. I passed out. Had to have a blood transfusion. That was pretty much the guys end up going to the conference tournament and we ended up losing. And that was tough too because I had drove myself to physical exhaustion. And prior to that, I was so physically unable to I was coaching, not able to stand up, like coaching games. I didn't miss a game prior, saying to me get hurt. And then going into dialysis. So I was going through all that. And one of the more disappointing parts was I had a meeting with my athletic director at the end of the 23-24 season. And no, sorry, the 24-25 season. Yeah, prior to last year. And she told me basically, I was like, this is my last year. She basically said that in that meeting. And I was like, how can you count the year? I didn't coach the games. Like the program is not in disarray. I just wasn't healthy. I'm getting healthy. I'm getting a transplant. You know what I'm saying? Like I had one of the best recruiting classes that I had since I was there. This was the first team that was fully mine, like guys that I brought in that weren't a part of Coach Huff's regime. These were guys that I recruited, that I watched, that I vetted, and academically we were as strong as ever as a men's basketball program that we had been in years. And at that moment, I should have left, man. I should have turned in my resignation letter because that just told me where the value was in me. It wasn't in who I was and what I was trying to build. It was in something else. Like she wanted to go in a different direction at that moment. I probably should have helped her find another coach for the program, but I tried to stay on, and that's when I got fired in October. So that's where the book came from, Season of Surrender. I basically chronicled the last 2 years of my identity, man. And when you get fired, you don't have an identity, Mark. It's like, who was I? My title was head coach. My title was basketball coach, and now I'm not a basketball coach. Who am I?
So is that where you came into, again, writing your book? I know you've wrote a book about the Huddle Matters. Is that where kind of all these have kind of come about?
No, so the Huddle Matters came before that. The Huddle Matters came because I wanted to give something, an encouragement book to coaches. I wanted to write something for coaches, like specifically to them. And I'm gonna send you a copy of it because it's free. But it's it was. Did you get a copy? Did I send you a copy?
Not yet. No.
Okay, no, I'll send that as soon as this is
Okay.
over. It's an amazing tool, man. I just wanted to give it for coaches. And if I meet a new coach and I text them, that's what I'll send them as a free gift, man, because so many times, man, we don't get poured into. And that was my way of pouring back to the profession that had given something to me. I wanted to be the voice that I look for sometimes of somebody encouraging me and saying, man, your huddle matters. Like, and it's all built around choices, communication, hard work, organization, and integrity, commitment, excitement, sacrifice. It's all built around that framework and just allowing coaches to be encouraged and just giving them, trying to give them the voice in their head to say, keep going, doing what you're doing, it matters. And then, so yeah, I had to lean on that a little bit when you get fired because again, you're totally separated from the guys. So now they got to get a new head coach and you have relationships. Like I have relationships with my players, like that went beyond the basketball court. So now you kind of got to be respectful of the new guy, not say anything bad. It wasn't anything negative. Like I said, I
Yeah.
enjoyed.
I've been
I,
I've been there.
yeah, man. And so I learned a little bit about myself. But again, it goes back to relationships, man. So I ended up moving to Bluffton with my wife. We just combined the households, one house. She was happy with me being, home. And man, I was just going to practices. Like I just was showing up because now I was a free agent, right? So I could just show up to like quote unquote enemies practices and just be like, hey man, I just want to be around the game still. And UNC Beaufort, Coach Huddle, man, I came into practice, watched a couple practices, and he reached out to Coach Huff and was like, "Hey, this guy keeps coming to my practices. Is he good?" And I wasn't looking for a job, and he came up to me. He said, "Hey, you want to come work with us?" And I was like, "Wow!" Again, relationships. Again, Coach Huff being at Edward Waters. I had an opportunity to go with him, and I wanted to be a head coach. I could have went with him to Edward Waters. Like that was something that was on the table. But I always said I wanted to be a head coach. And so, Marcus, the crazy thing, and I know I keep saying the crazy thing. One of the more remarkable things is my goal was to be a college head coach, and I became that. So after some realization, man, I realized like I've gotten the opportunity to do everything that I wanted to do in this profession. I've been a head coach. I've been an assistant coach. I've coached in a D1 arena. All the things that I wanted to do as I was watching TV as a basketball fan in my teens, I got a chance to do. So when I really look back and put things in perspective, if I'd never coached another game as a head coach again, I've done everything that I set out to do. And I can honestly tell my son that. I can tell my daughter that. I can tell my friends and family that. I got everything that I wanted to get out of this profession, this business, and everything else now is just icing on the cake. I volunteer at USCB, and I'm just as involved as if I'm getting paid because my work ethic doesn't change. He gets
Well, and
100%.
sometimes,
Yeah.
again, sometimes when you go that route of going the volunteer, like I've been there too after the fact, and it's actually kind of a refreshing kind of feeling. You're kind of the young that it almost goes reverse where you're that 2010, 2011 coach all over again, coaching
Yeah.
AAU, and you're doing it for the reasons that you got into it, right? Where
Yeah.
once you get into the thick of it and you're like, I'm an assistant and now I'm paid and now I'm going to be a head coach and this and that, it almost becomes about the reasons that you didn't do it for.
Yes, sir.
And then you go back to the volunteer and you're like, actually, this is why I got into it, right? Like it's the relationships, it's the getting people better, it's the camaraderie, it's everything else. And so I think but it's tough, right? Like you said, like you get fired and you have this label and you might have never considered yourself a basketball coach, but because that's what you invest and put your time into, now it's taken away from you and you're like, no, that's who I am. Like, you can't take that from me. So
Yeah.
there is a real like identity thing there. But when you get out of it and you get some time and reflection, and again, that's probably where the book comes in. And, now being a volunteer, you're like, hell, I'm having as much fun as I did when the reasons I got in this to begin with.
And less pressure.
Yes.
Got less pressure. But finding yourself, like I'm in this season now where I'm finding out a lot more. I'm using my name a lot more because a lot of people call me Coach J. Coach J all day is like my business, and I started 3 businesses. So my wife is an entrepreneur, so I got the bug from her. But the book writing, just being in the community, and I'm still in the community. I have an 8-year-old daughter through marriage, and her school, being at the Parks and Recs here in Bluffton. My son lives in Atlanta, so I'm always connected to Atlanta. It's always home. And honestly, there could be opportunities for me back at the high school level because of my experience. But I think I was a little iffy and antsy because I was like, yo, how does being fired look to other people? And then for the reason that I got fired, it wasn't anything where I'm stealing money or anything inappropriate with co-eds or anything like that. It was because I lied to my AD about taking my guys to the beach. So as small as it was, there was a lesson for me in that in integrity, the I in choices, it has to be always a paramount. Like regardless, even if you feel like you may get in trouble for something, you should always tell the truth. But then it goes back to the relationships. And because I did such good, solid work, people really know you and you don't get labeled anything because they know the work that you did. And I don't have anything to prove, man. The pudding speaks in my text messages, the phone calls, the fact that I can call people, still there. So I felt like I didn't do anything malicious or damaging to my reputation. But I did hurt my athletic director by lying to her, and that was a lesson that I'll take with me for the rest of my life. Like having that trust and honesty in this business is rare nowadays with the way money floating around and people's ego. And that's something that I never want to lose again with anybody. I much rather be known as somebody who's trustworthy and honest and loyal than somebody who's just good for the win, trying to get the bag. Like I'm good for tuition increases and fan, engagement. But now I want to be known as somebody who's integral to the organization, and an asset wherever I go. So those are the lessons that I take from that situation.
Well, and again, that's what and sitting down with so many people on this podcast, that's what it comes down to, right? Like things
Yep.
happen and you have a chance to learn from them or just keep going on and doing whatever, right? And
It,
I think the more people that can step back and realize like, hey, I can take something from this, like makes you all the better. So, I mean, James, I appreciate you coming on and telling your story. Again, I think it's funny how small this world is and the amount of podcast guests we've had because somebody else was on, like Cabral being on and obviously being at North Florida now. And it was so much fun sitting down with him. So it was a pleasure to get to know you. And obviously we'll stay in touch with things.
yeah, Marcus, no problem, man. Like I said, I'm gonna send you my book, man. I appreciate you. I love what you do, man. Don't you stop. Don't you stop giving guys like myself a voice to be able to share, not nothing in a negative way, but just kind of share their journey. Because what I realize is you telling the story could help another coach get back up off the sideline or be able to help a young man. There's so many young coaches out there who get blindsided by the glamour of the business. It's that there's an underbelly. There's an underbelly that you gotta have a reality for. So man, you don't stop doing what you do. Any way I can help to make it bigger and better, you can always call on me or reach on me, man. And I want to get you on mine to tell your story too, because you got a story to tell. So appreciate you.